All right, guys, welcome back to the shack. And tonight we're going to be going over a very small machine. This is going to be my second video on the Cubico from Genmitsu. And I'm assuming I'm saying that correctly. The Cubico is a very small, we're going to call it lightweight because it is lightweight. And also, me personally, I think it's intended to be used with lightweight materials such as, woods, acrylics, PC boards, things that don't require a whole lot of power and rigidness to be able to machine. And that's where this guy comes in. Now, it's very economical, and if you're wanting to get into making some stuff with CNCs, but you don't want to spend a whole lot of money, you might want to look at it and see if this is going to be for you. So that's what this video is going to be about. This is my original prototype that I received several weeks ago. And this is the brand new consumer ready model. And there are some differences and some pretty big changes, more than I thought I would see. And that's what we're gonna go over today is where I am with the consumer model after using both it and the prototype. So if that's something you're into, stick around and we're gonna get started. All right, guys, so here it is. And these two are almost set up identical at this point. There's a couple of things that I've been doing to them to kind of tweak them to my own liking. But before we get into that, let me just kind of go over what to expect if you get this machine. First of all, to do a project with this machine, it's gonna have to be relatively small. This is a little tray that I made with the Cubico. It does a really good job. This is a pine wood, so it's not a real hardwood. But I've been able, with this newer machine, I've been able to get a lot better depth of cut with this machine than I did with the older one. And I'm going to think that that's because of some of the production differences. And we'll go over those in just a minute. But just so you know, woods, like I said, the harder the wood, of course, the slower you're going to have to go and all that. Acrylics, I did this little acrylic project here on the original machine, as well as the PCB board and just some pocketing. This was my test pocket and everything in preparation for doing this. So lightweight materials that aren't gonna put up a lot of resistance. The machine does a really good job. I haven't tried the newest one with metals, but from looking at the Z-axis, is it possible? Yes. Would it require you to go painfully slow? Yes, in my opinion, it would. So if you're doing anything with metals and you're going really thick, other than engraving, you'd probably be okay. But if you're trying to machine down, or if you're trying to cut thicker aluminum and things like that, this is probably not where you want to land as far as your selection of a CNC. If you're just wanting to engrave those things, you could do that with relative ease. Because you're not going to be going that deep with the pass, and you'd be able to, move through the material without putting a whole lot of pressure on the spindle as well as the Z-axis. Because this machine, you can tell that it wasn't intended to be doing really hard materials, obviously, because the Z-axis is mostly plastic. And so you're not going to be, I would not recommend trying to do a whole lot of metal with it. Another thing to consider is that the work area of this machine, this is my little spoil board that I've made. And I've been cutting these out with a laser out of some scrap material. They work really, really well. I just use 4 screws, screw it to this metal bed right here, and that gives you that little bit of oops room in case you were to go too deep. It also allows you to be able to use, I've been using tape, X-Fasten tape, and just attaching my work pieces to this with the X-Fasten. It's staying on there really, really good. And like I said, if you do set your depth a little deep, you've got a 1/4 inch to play with there. So it's pretty handy, in my opinion, for this machine. So looking at my spoil board here, the work area, the operating platform of this machine's only going to be about 4.5, a little over 4.5 inches by 7 inches. So that's not a real big project. And for you metric guys, we'll say that it's going to be about 120 by 180 as far as the bed itself goes. Of course, the work area is going to be slightly smaller than that. But for small objects and just little small projects, that does give you enough room to make things like these little small catch trays. And you'll see here that I've got these two that I've made. I've been running both of them last night. I was playing around with this one, just testing it, seeing how it does. And compared to the original, it's actually performing, I think, a little better. And I attribute that to, I was told the original one had a lot of 3D printed parts on it, and it appeared that it did. And I think I did away with a little bit of that and have come up with a little more of a rigid design. It still has some plastic on it, but I don't think it's the 3D printed plastic as much as it is more a molded piece at this point. So I think that's added a little bit more rigidity to it. So let me put this away, and I want to show you guys a few things that there's a difference between the newer one and the older one, but you can always go back and watch my full review of the prototype. I'll drop a link down below and maybe even try to add it to here, but I'll drop a link to the other video that I did on the original prototype that I have. I did a lot of testing on it, and they just wanted to send me out the newer one so that I could compare it, because this one was in fact a prototype. And I'm going to show you those differences and how I think those are going to affect the end product here. All right, so first off, guys, the machine is your basic GRBL machine. It's controlled very much like most of the lasers and stuff that we use. You can use Candle, you can use G-Sender, you can use all these different control softwares. But I will say, and if you see this, CNC Labs, thank you. Thank you for creating G-Sender. I have went to using G-Sender on all of the GRBL machines that I test, such as these. I don't use it for my big machine, but it's because it has its own software. But I am quickly and rapidly falling in love with G-Sender, specifically with this machine. So one of the things about this machine that I will point out to you is both of them have this little small display here, which is it's a controller, and it operates the functions of the machine, kind of an offline controller type thing. It's kind of small. It's got like a little, little cord that kind of goes up in the machine, holds on with magnets. It's pretty handy. It's functional. It does things, okay? But G-Sender, as you can see it up there, the really cool part that I have ran into with using G-Sender is this. And yes, guys, although the machine does have this little tiny offline controller here, you can use that to set the job up. It's fine. It works. But if you have larger hands and not that great of eyesight, it can be a little troublesome. But thanks to the guys over at CNC Labs for creating G-Sender. Check it out. I can actually remove this machine using my Xbox controller here, hooked to the computer. And this is just Bluetooth to my laptop, or to my computer, and I can actually set the job. So if I want to go right or left, we're gonna kind of pretend we're setting this job up over here on the right corner. And I'm going to move the head over there while talking to you guys to the right corner of the material. And then once I get it on the corner of the material, I can use this left joystick right here and just kind of bump it and lower it down and set the Z-axis. So I've just set the X, Y, and Z-axis with the controller. That is what I think G-Sender is just, it is very nice. Again, thank you very much, CNC Labs. I appreciate G-Sender being free for the masses. It just made life much, much better. So that takes this little machine. If you partner this machine with G-Sender, in my opinion, it's a big upgrade for the machine. Not that I'm knocking anything about Genmitsu software. They have an app for it. This one actually does show that it has Wi-Fi. I haven't tested the Wi-Fi. I'm pretty sure it's just going to be an ad hoc network type local network to where you could connect to the Wi-Fi of the machine and be able to do things through the wireless controller. That's not something I look for in a machine. I'm running this machine USB controlled to the computer, and I'm using the Xbox controller to kind of manipulate and move it to set the jobs up. Or like when I'm getting ready to take this job out of there, I can just simply grab the controller. The one thing that you will notice is I've had to, excuse all my dust, I've had to modify this little cover. So while we're on the topic, let's talk about the things that they didn't fix. So far, out of the things that I really didn't like about the other one, they've addressed most of the issues. The only issue that I did have with this one in my testing is there's a limit switch up here. And this limit switch will deactivate the spindle and it'll shut the machine down. If you're running a job and this limit switch is not depressed, it will stop the job. And when I first started trying to run this test project, I was having intermittent, like it would stop and start, stop and start, stop and start. And eventually it got to the point where it just wouldn't go. And it was this cover. Well, in my prototype, I had the same issue, but you can tell these are two different materials. It's a little flimsier material. And I will say this, if you're in a colder environment where this material is, you know, not as limber, you may not have this issue. But here in Alabama, it gets a little hot, gets a little humid, and things tend to get soft if they get soft to heat. So I created this little bracket here. I made this as a little 3D print file, and all this does is adds a little rib to that to stiffen it up so that when you push this down, this doesn't buckle in the middle and cause it to release that little limit switch right there. They could have fixed it a couple of different ways. They could have done what I did, or they could have, you know, made it push into the material and had a little bit different setup as far as how the limit switch is pressed. But I printed another one in black for this one, just so it wouldn't, you know, be as noticeable. And that fixed the issue. I haven't had any more problems with the machine stopping during a job or anything since I did this. So this works, and I'm just adhering it to the lid with some X-Fasten tape, the same tape I used to attach this to the bed space. So I'm gonna clean this up with my shop vac right quick, and then I'll pop this off and I'm gonna show you this little project I did with it. All right, so I used this little chisel here that I don't use for anything else for the most part to kind of pop these things up once I get through cutting them. And you can see the tape holds really well. A little too well, in fact, at times. Here's the engrave that I did, and you'll see a little bit of this fuzz and stuff on it. That's because I'm using a single flute end mill, and these are actual Genmitsu bits that I bought on Amazon, and these are the cheapest of the cheaps, guys. These are nothing fancy. I do have better bits. A lot of times I'll run my Genie bits with these smaller machines, but in this situation, since this is a budget machine, and I look for this to be guys that are kind of relatively new to it, and nobody wants to, you don't want to spend this little bit of money on a machine and then have to buy the more expensive bits, because you're probably going to break a few to start with. So I didn't use the Genie bits. I wanted to use something that I felt like you guys could probably order when you ordered the machine. And so that's why I got these. These are 1/8 inch shank. They just call them flat end mills. I've got the numbers and stuff for here on the back, but I'll drop a link to those down below also. And I get them from Genmitsu. And I didn't quite cut all the way through this, but let me go knock it off with a sander. And yeah, you can see I kind of misjudged my thickness a little bit. So let me go knock this off with the bandsaw, hit it with a sander, and we'll be right back. All right, so I got both of these pieces off of the machines, as you can see, and get them all cleaned up and got all the dust out of there. These are the two that I just pulled off. I did this on the new one, and I haven't sanded or done anything with this. It does have some slight little witness lines in the bottom of the pocket, but now, like I said, I didn't do anything fancy with the tool path. I did a simple pocket tool path there. Haven't run over it with a ball nose or anything that, you know, to try to smooth that out. All I was doing was trying to test for rigidity and see what kind of little projects you can make. And like I said, these little trays, this one's made out of oak. Same thing here. It's got a little bit of witness lines in the bottom of it, but nothing terrible. This is a little bigger one. This is about as big as you can do with this machine, in my opinion, because you know, you're not going to get a whole lot bigger. But doing small jobs so far, it's performing really well. So let me kind of go through, because I don't want to redo the entire, like, my review that I did on the first machine completely. But let me just go through and I'll point out a few of the things that have changed from the old one to the new one. So let's do that. All right, so of course we've already touched on the fact that this limit switch and that cover, there's a little bit of room for improvement there. This little 3D printed part that I put on here that I guess I could put it in my Etsy store with my spoil board file if you're interested. This little guy fixed the problem for me, but I was hoping to see, because I actually sent Genmitsu pictures of what I had done to fix it, so I was kind of hoping they would incorporate it into it when they made the machine, but they didn't. The obvious thing that I noticed between the two machines, of course, is here on the back of the original one that I have, this guy has no markings. It's just plain. There's nothing on there. With this production model, I did get a different kind of plastic, and I also have the little sticker indented in here that has a serial number and everything. So big flag. Prototype, no serial number. Consumer model has a serial number. This material over here feels more as though maybe it was printed on a resin printer or something like that, whereas this is what you would traditionally imagine, you know, something plastic being made like. Almost like this one was form filled, or, you know, some type of vacuum poured, whereas this one almost seems a little resin printed. So, and it probably was. The other big difference that I've noticed with these two machines, now I don't expect these small machines to be overly powerful. But one thing that I will say is if you grab the Z-axis on this and exert a little bit of force on it, there's a lot more wiggle in this one than there is the newer one. The newer one, the Z-axis, I mean, if I bear it down, I'm sure I could make it move a little bit, but it's less flex. It just feels more solid when I do pull on it. I can pull hard enough to move it, but, you know, it's not that much. This one was much easier to move. Same thing with this bracket. The one over here seems like it was a 3D printed part. You can actually almost see tool lines in it where it was 3D printed, whereas this one is more of a solid. It looks as though it was either machined or poured in a mold as opposed to 3D printed. So other than that, the bars, the bearings and everything, the lead screw, all of that seems to be the same. The power buttons, all the plugs, electronically speaking, I think it's the same, except for the controller seems to have gotten quite the upgrade. And I've got a little close-up video of the two controllers, and I'll show you right there. But the new one has a few more features. But all in all, guys, very simple. Generic Genmitsu limit switches for the most part. These are the limit switches that have the little metal lever, so you're gonna have to make sure not to tear those off. I will tell you that if you're cleaning your machine, be real careful with this one, because on my prototype I have had to replace this top limit switch, but it was because I was wiping it down and I caught this limit switch with a rag and broke the little foot off of it. So watch for that if you're cleaning your machine. But like I said, between the two machines, for the most part, I think the consumer model is definitely upgraded and a little more refined from what I had gotten with the prototype. And like I said, it was a prototype, and I understand that. But I still think you're going to need to make sure that you understand that this machine does have its limitations, work area, and as far as the speed and power and being able to plow through material, this is going to be a limited machine. But if you're wanting to do things like acrylics and small wood projects like these little guys here, and you don't plan on running anything larger than an 1/8" bit, then, you know, maybe this is something you want to look into. Sainsmart asked me to look at it and evaluate it, and that's what I'm doing, guys. Like I said, use your own judgment, do your research, do your homework. I know my friend Steve over at Ventari's workshop, he's also getting one of these little machines to play with. I don't think this is the last CNC. If you do get it, unless you're just wanting to do PCB boards, I don't think this will be the last CNC you get, because I do think that you have a tendency to want to upgrade, you know, bigger, stronger, faster, that kind of thing. And I know I did. That's why you see this thing sitting here. But I think if you're trying to get your feet into it and you want something light enough that you can carry it around the shop, maybe this is what you need. Because I want to show you guys. As far as lightweight, I mean, literally, you know, most of you guys wouldn't have any problem. I'm not saying that there's not somebody, but most of you guys wouldn't have any problem moving this around the shop. It's not all of that heavy. Doesn't have a really big footprint. So if you're one of those folks that, you know, maybe you work out on your back deck on the weekends and just making little projects and having some fun, wanting to get out there and make something, you know, you could literally store this in the closet, take it outside and run it if you wanted to. It's small, even with the, like I've been putting all of my parts and power supplies and stuff like that, I've been putting them inside the machine and putting the cover on it. And, you know, there's room for that in there. So altogether, it is what it is, guys. It's a small machine, but it's been performing really well for my expectations. And I think they did a pretty good job on it. Genmitsu, I've had several other machines, and so far I've had all of them have performed really well. The only other little hang up I wish maybe we had addressed is right around the edge of this little door right here. There's a little crevice where the bottom of this cover sits in. As you run it, you're going to need to make sure you clean this little crevice out because it will collect dust. And as it collects dust, it'll pack down in there and it'll build up. And that also can cause this little button not to get pressed. All right, guys, so that's going to wrap it up. There's not a whole lot to say about these little guys. Small machines, compact, capable. They work the same as most any other CNC. I haven't used them with their software. I've only used VCarve. I did use Candle with them, but mostly, I'm telling you, if you haven't used G-Sender with these little smaller machines like this, you're missing the boat. It is really awesome. It's a powerful little tool, and it does add the ability to use the controller. So that's really, really handy for these little machines. That's a function that you would think you would only get with bigger machines, but thanks to G-Sender, it works. So I'll also drop a link down to CNC Lab's download page for G-Sender down below, in case you're interested. But don't take my word for it, guys. Go check out other people's videos. More specifically, go check out Steve's video. I don't know if it's not out yet, but he will have his video on this machine out pretty soon. And go see what he thinks about it. But until next time, guys, be safe and have a good day.